Welcome, everyone, to How to Buy Your First Dental Practice Challenge. My name is Paul, Dr. Nacho Goodman. Super excited to be here to help you figure out this wacky world of owning your own dental practice, making a mess of your ice pop like my daughter is okay, making a mess of buying your first practice is not okay. This challenge is designed to be super fun, super free, and super helpful. Please share any questions that you have in the chat so we can answer them, because the most important person here is you. You are the most important person. Please share your questions, comments, and concerns with me. I would love to customize how I can help you for maximum impact. If you do not want to share your questions in the chat, I know some of this stuff you think is confidential. Who are we going to tell? We're not going to tell anyone. There's also an anonymous way to share that question, but you can also text it to this number. That is my community text hotline. The Nacho team gets it too. They can bring that to me here. This is going to be designed to be sitcom style. I'm a child of the 80s, Family Ties, Cheers, Growing Pains, all those shows, those sitcoms. Pay attention for 22 minutes, commercials for 8 minutes, 30 minutes, but we're going to answer questions throughout. We're going to have multiple parts to this series. This episode 1 is going to focus on how to avoid making a $30,000 mistake like I did, how to avoid making a $30,000 mistake like I did when buying a dental practice. So as we get some more people filtering in here, you're going to see me in a second. You see my face on screen already. So why do you want to buy a dental practice? You know, you're here, you're listening. Put in the chat, why do you want to own a dental practice? For the adoring fans, for the fame, for the fortune, for control over your crown preps, so you can be the boss? Do you want to be the boss? So think about this for a minute. I'll let this question sit for a little bit. Why do you want to buy a dental practice? And I'll also share some common things people tell me, dental associates, sometimes dental students, but why do you want to buy? Think about that, because your why is so important. I would love if you would share in the chat your why. You can do it. I see people here already who I know. I won't shout you out, but I see basketball fan number 1. I don't know if he's happy. The Sixers have moved on at the time of this recording. They moved on to round 2. His team, I don't think, has moved on, but why do you want to buy a dental practice? Great. So I thank you for answering. I want to be my own boss and have control over the procedures I do and the materials that I use. Thank you for answering. Give that person a $50 Nacho CE gift code for being the first person to answer. See, be the first person to answer, you win prizes. So now you guys can see my face. Well, you see my face, 2 faces at one time. So growing up, I wanted to be a doctor, dentist, or lawyer. My dad was an awesome dad, amazing mentor, amazing dentist. He always said there was a value in being your own boss. So being your own boss is a double-edged sword. You have a lot of control, but you also have a lot of risk. But that is a common reason. You want more control. You want to be your own boss. So how do you get this dental practice? But what are some of the benefits of owning your own dental practice? You can set your own schedule. You can choose the materials that you want to use. You can do the dentistry you want to do. You don't want to do endo? Refer it right out. Go right down the street to the endodontist, wherever the endodontist works. So there's some benefits. You can work 7 to 7, 3 days a week if that fits your schedule, and you can find a team to do that. So there are definitely some benefits to owning your dental practice. Your income potential as a practice owner most of the time is higher than as an associate, most of the time. But can anyone share with me what has happened in our dental space that's created associates? And I don't know if the word associate's right for this type of dentist. So I think of a dental associate as someone like I have multiple dental associates. They work with my brother and I, the practice owners. They're associates in our practices. They might work 3 days a week. They might work 4 days a week. But there's an associate out there. Who do they work for? And many of them make more money than more practice owners. So who are the associates? Where do they work when they make more money than a lot of practice owners? Does anyone know the answer to that question? Where do associates exist in this newish dental space? They're making more money than practice owners. So a golden Nacho tip to embrace, that when I got out of dental school, all of my friends who were associates, and I was associate for a short period of time myself, we all made more money when we became owners, but that doesn't happen. I sell practices. I help dentists buy practices. And I talk to this type of dentist. I say, here's a great practice. It does $700,000 a year. Owner has 50% overhead. You could make $350,000 a year after debt service. Maybe that's $270,000 a year. And they say, oh, but I make $1,500 a day working 200 days a year at my associate job. Where do they usually work when they make a lot of money as an associate? Does anyone know that answer? Does anyone know an answer? Where? My friend said no NBA talk. Here, that was my failed dream, being an NBA basketball player. So where do they work? They work at DSOs. So why can you shoot threes of production like Steph Curry at a DSO? Because you were replacing a practice owner who owned that practice and was super productive. So something to learn, something to know. Maybe you're a dental student. Maybe you're someone who's selling a practice. Maybe you're in the middle. Associates at DSOs can earn significantly high income because they are replacing a previous practice owner who the DSO bought the practice from. So DSO associates, which I think should be its own separate category versus private practice associates. So most of the time, if you work for a private practice, you are going to earn more money as a practice owner. So that's a benefit of owning a dental practice. But then let's talk here. What are some of the challenges of owning a dental practice? Owning a circus, I mean practice, I mean circus. You being in charge, you having all the responsibility, you managing the team, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink is a great book to read. You are the owner. Everything that happens in that practice is your responsibility, from clinical to business to management to leadership. One of the big shifts, golden nacho tip, number 2, going from associate to practice owner, going from associate to practice owner. A huge shift is the amount of things you have to think about while you're doing dentistry. So you can be in your room doing an implant crown as an associate and a practice owner. As an associate, you're thinking, I finished this implant crown. I can go on Facebook and read Dental Nachos. I can listen to a podcast. I can go on my phone. As a practice owner, thinking, as soon as I finish this implant crown, I got to work on the payroll. I got to work on this. Somebody's fighting over paper towels. So when you're an associate, I could call that the aunt or uncle of the practice. You're there to protect the practice, make sure it's safe. But if the toilet breaks, not your problem. If the payroll doesn't pay your team, which has happened to us, and people can't pay their bills, which has happened to us, and you have to figure that out while you have to check 2 hygienists. So you have to be able to mentally shift gears, be much more mentally flexible, and answer a lot of questions. So what's the difference from going from associate to practice owner? Shifting gears mentally all the time, thinking about things outside of clinical dentistry, being mentally flexible, worrying about the quote unquote toilet breaking, the payroll not being run, the supplies not coming, the server going down, ransomware, things that you get texts in the morning. Whenever you get a morning text on your cell phone as a practice owner, not once has it been, hey, Paul, you're so handsome and funny. Can't wait to see you at the office. No, it's unfortunately my child's sick. I can't get into work. This happened. I can't go into work. So what do you do as an associate? If the hygienist, I have an awesome hygienist watching in with us who also works with me at Dental Nachos, she can't come to work. The associate's like, oh, guess they're not coming to work. The practice owner's like, we got to change all the patients. We got to do this. So it's important that you get golden nacho tip number 3. Get as good as possible at your clinical dentistry before you become a practice owner. Know your systems. It doesn't mean you can't add in implant placement. It doesn't mean you can't add in sleep apnea, but becoming clinically competent, clinically comfortable, being able to troubleshoot. So if an implant crown doesn't fit for me as an owner versus an associate, it's the same implant crown that doesn't fit, but I can troubleshoot with decision-making. So decision fatigue, a concept you can Google, decision fatigue. Barry Polanski turned me on that, Dr. Barry Polanski. He wrote a great book. He's one of my friends. I wrote a book, The Porch. I highly recommend you check it out. He's in practice for many years, went from PPO to fee-for-service practice owner. Decision fatigue is a real thing. So what are some challenges you're worried about? So that's enough talking from me. What are some challenges that you're worried about? You're here, you might want to buy a practice. This is a back and forth. When you see my face go off, think of typing something in the chat. What are some challenges you're thinking about in buying a practice? How could I help you overcome these challenges? Feel better about these challenges? Insurance, team management, leadership, crying inside. What are some of these challenges? We get more people. We have more and more people rolling in here to this course. So we've gone over a few golden nacho tips. DSO associates can earn a very high amount of income. So if you're a DSO associate and you go to buy a practice, you may have to acknowledge or understand that you may make less money initially as a practice owner. Traditionally, private practice associates, when you've gone from associate to practice owner, from private practice, you've earned more money. Being able to mentally switch gears, mental flexibility, answer questions as a practice owner, different than an associate. Golden nacho tip, associate is the aunt or uncle, practice owner is the parent. I'm an aunt or uncle of awesome, awesome nieces and nephews. They're my sister's children. If they're having a meltdown, I'm like, here, Jill, this is the one that you own. I have these 2 over here. So it happens to me even as a parent. Aunt or uncle, get as clinically comfortable. Golden nacho tip, get as clinically comfortable with your clinical dentistry before owning a practice. Learn how to troubleshoot. Learning how to troubleshoot doesn't mean there's no trouble. It just means you know how to get out of these jams. And sometimes the jam is sending the patient home and taking impression the next day. Sometimes it is shifting gears and doing something different in that procedure. So we're going to keep going on here with some more questions. So what is our checklist for success to create a framework for this challenge? Take a picture of this. This is everything, okay? Anyone see the show This Is Us? I was watching it, but I didn't feel like crying on a Tuesday anymore, so I stopped watching it. It's a great show. So this is everything. Why do you want to buy a dental practice? Why do you want to buy a dental practice? How to get started, work with brokers and find a practice. Where should you buy a practice? Who should be on your team to prepare and protect you? When should you connect with a bank? What helps you with success, prevents too much stress, and reduces crying inside? So let's go back to my story here for a minute. So the story of my mistake, overpaying by at least $30,000 when buying a practice. In 2011, I overpaid for our second dental practice. This was our first big problem. This is our satellite practice. Here are some of the reasons why this happened and what I would do differently now. I've owned this practice with my brother for the past decade, and there have been some really good parts about having this practice and some stressful parts. My goal in sharing this experience is to help you be a little more aware and prepared in making a huge life decision. Number one problem, the seller was represented by a dual representation broker. What this means is both the seller and the buyer, me, had to pay a commission to this broker. So golden nacho tip, dual representation brokerage is nacho nuts. I don't know how it's legal. I don't know how dentistry accepts it. I accepted it a decade ago. There was no dental nachos. There was no Mark Costas podcast. There was just me trying to figure things out. So when the dual representation broker said, I'm going to help you and the seller, I'm going to, oh, that sounds pretty nice. Little did I know, this is one of the reasons why I overpaid $30,000. I'm going to use an example. Sorry to bring up basketball again, but I got a lot of basketball fans on here. Would it be normal if people said, my favorite team is the Lakers, and also my favorite team is the Celtics? That would be odd. Very, very odd. My favorite team's the Sixers, also the Celtics. Very, very odd. My favorite team's the Sixers, also the Knicks. Very, very odd. That's a Rob Montgomery joke. So a dual representation broker claims to be able to represent both sides. We're going to go over a little more of that in a minute. So I would be very reluctant to work with a dual representation broker, again, as a buyer. And if I had to do it for some reason, I would have my transition team, especially my dental focused attorney, be extremely cautious about the claims made by the broker and the practice in the seller's mindset. Second big mistake I made was paying 70% of collections. We're going to talk over this challenge about how practices are valued. How do we value practices? We're going to talk about how that's done because I work as a seller's broker. But a take-home tip, a golden nacho tip, is the value of a practice should be based on profit, not percentage of collections. See, this is how we learn short bits of information. This is how you see people. If you made a cartoon of me and I was saying this, you should say, this is Dr. Paul Goodman, dentist and practice broker, someone who overpaid for a practice. What he's sharing with you, golden nacho tip, is the value of a practice should be based on profit, not percentage of collections. So I paid 70% of collections. I should have paid based on profit. I didn't know any better at the time. Looking back now, if a more up-to-date practice valuation metrics were used, the purchase price should have only been 50% of total collections. What I would do now is have a dental-focused accountant analyze the true profit before I made an offer. So another golden nacho tip here is, if you cannot afford to pay the right advisors, I know this is tough, you're not ready to buy a practice. So if you cannot afford or don't want to, or are too dentist cheap to pay the right advisors, you're not ready to buy a practice. This is the biggest decision of your entire life, not your dental career. I sell practices with my awesome Nacho transition team. We meet dentists at the end of their life. Right now, they're overwhelmingly male, few females, but there's going to change to male and female. But these males that we meet in their 60s and 70s may have had multiple houses, multiple spouses, one practice. The practice they bought when they're 29 is the same practice they had when they're 69. It's an super, super, super big decision, the biggest decision of your life. So if you don't want to pay a dental focused accountant $2,500 to analyze the cash flow, just an example, could be more, could be less. If you don't want to pay $2,500 to analyze the true cash flow, you're not ready to buy a practice because you're going to burn your nachos, make a mistake if you don't get all the data that you need to survive, succeed, and thrive. So I would have had a dental-focused accountant truly analyze the cash flow of that practice. Smart people learn from mistakes. Truly wise people learn from mistakes of others. Great quote, not made up by me. So I'm going to pause for a minute. When you talk a lot, you do this with patients all the time. Implant, abutment, crown, snap in, snap out. I'm going to pause and just say, what questions can I answer for you so far? That's number one. Or if you've been here for 15 minutes, okay, 15 minutes, what have you learned? What's one thing you've learned? So what have you been, anyone can answer this, anyone who's on the Zoom, what's one thing you've learned? Or what question can I answer for you? I'm going to give 60 seconds without my face for that. Got a great input here, profit, not collection and evaluation. So again, I'm the best teacher ever because there are a few questions, valuation of a practice. It's based on profit, not percentage of collections as we go through these webinars, just like when you watch and one fan of Game of Thrones, Schitt's Creek, Lupin, it's a whole show thing here. So we're not doing the whole show in the first show. We're introducing what we're going to talk about. We're giving out golden nacho tips. Who would you recommend we have on the best team possible? Great. So I'll talk about this. You're here. You came to the thing. I love basketball. Okay. So who's on your basketball team? Okay. Starting at point guard is your dental focused accountant. Shooting guard, dental focused attorney. Center. I know there's not centers as traditional ways, like when I was growing up and watching 80s basketball. Center is going to be a bank. So we have bank, dental focused attorney, dental focused accountant. We're also going to put into this mix a financial coach, a personal confidant, somebody to analyze the insurance, the sixth man. So right then and there, those are 6 part of it. We're going to have whole team-based episodes. You're going to hear from a dental focused accountant, a dental focused attorney. They're going to be on the show. So you're going to hear what they do, but that's your lineup. Dental focused accountant, dental focused attorney, bank, someone who can analyze the insurance, practice management coach / consultant, financial coach. I'm going to share with you, we have many sponsors at Dental Nachos. They buy me cars, usually they're Matchbox cars. They pay to sponsor the group, but they're people that we connect with who can help you. What I've shared is that my goal is to connect you to good people, and your goal is to determine if they're good fits for you. This, just so you know, you're not everybody's dentist, nor do you want to be. No one's everybody's attorney, but when you know people who you can connect with and interview and ask, you're starting to build your team and know that you need this people on your team. So really great questions that we got here so far. I learned that you should not move forward person practice unless you can afford the transition team. Really good point. If you cannot afford the transitions team, you're not ready to move forward. I don't know if that's tough advice, not so ordinary advice. I don't know if that's tough love, but if you cannot afford the transitions team, you're not ready to move forward. So this is, take a picture of this before I go on the checklist. We're going to come back to this over and over again. So now let's talk about just some questions, okay? Is it dangerous to work with a dual representation broker? Yes, it is dangerous to work with a dual representation broker. If you want to take a picture of this, you feel free to take a picture. Golden nacho tip, a dual representation broker claims to be able to represent both the buyer and seller during the sale of a dental practice. That's not possible. You cannot represent both the buyer and the seller and have both of their interests in mind. We're selling a practice today. We're in the process of doing one for the rest of this month. We work for the seller with the buyer, for the seller with the buyer. We're paid by the seller, okay? We're paid by the seller, or we may do buyer coaching, but we don't get these mixed up because you need your own team advocating for you. So, and I just want to know, whoever pays more usually is the person they have more allegiances to, which is totally normal. So dual rep brokers, I just wish they picked a side. Just pick a side. That's it. Just pick a side. Don't leave the industry. Pick a side. I don't know how this works. I don't know how this is legal, but it's be very cautious and get a good team of advisors to work with you when you're doing this. Let's talk about the asking price of a dental practice. We're going to talk a lot about this over this series, but the asking price of a dental practice is priced to sell and not necessarily in line with what makes sense when the true profit is analyzed. It is important to analyze the numbers with a dental focused accountant. Okay. So let's take a practice, Dr. Nacho's House of Dentistry. It does $1 million a year. I have numerous people watching in. So if you're buying the dental practice, okay, raise your hand in the chat. So I told you net profit is the best way to analyze a practice. The profit is $300,000, okay? So let's say it's twice the profit, $600,000. practice does 1 million. If I'm the selling broker, I told you 2 times the profit, 600. If I'm the selling broker and I list that practice for $750,000, raise your hand if you think I'm being unfair. Am I being unfair? Anyone think I'm being unfair? I should list it at the exact right 2 times the profit, right? Because here's the question. If I was selling the practice for you, raise your hand if I was selling a dental practice for you, you would want the best price possible. Do you want the best price possible? Raise your hand in the chat. Okay, you want the best price possible. So practices that are priced to sell are different than their value. I put there in red, much like homes in high demand areas, practices in high demand areas will often sell at a price higher than what the true profit warrants. So it's up to you to make the best offer possible. You don't want to lose a practice you can practice in over the next 20 years or 30 years over $5,000. But what it's sharing is the job of the selling broker is to get the best price possible, to get as many people interested and to be as responsible as possible. The reason you can be responsible is because the banks will often lend you 85 to 90% of collections. But banks don't care what you earn. They just care if you can pay the loan. So banks don't care what you earn, golden nacho tip. Banks do not care about your income. They care if you can pay the loan. And that's how it should be. So if you buy a practice and the selling dentist was making $250 and you make $200, but you're paying a loan, bank is happy as could be. You might not be as happy, or you might be happy. So the asking price of a practice is based on a variety of factors. At its core, the net profit drives it, but also location, number of operatories, how many dentists are in the area. There could be a practice that profits $500,000 on $1 million in the middle of Pennsylvania that might sell for 50% of collections because that's not as high demand an area. So important to recognize this and not get all dentisty about it. Don't say that's too high, that's too low. Just look at it and make the best offer possible. You're buying usually one dental practice. This is my advice. Hire a transition team, all those people. Look at practice, talk with your spouse if you have a spouse, your personal confidant. And if this is the practice you want, after you get bank financing, make the strongest offer possible, not the most dentist offer possible. Don't say it's not fair, it should be 610, not 650, not 680, not 690. This is the episode 1 of our preview of this show, but that is a golden nacho tip that I can give you to take home there. So as we wrap up episode 1 and leave time for questions, and to see here, answer profit, not collections. I always thought dual representation sounded nuts. It is nuts, totally nuts. Okay, tell you someone, do you like the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles? I have people on this chat who would find that person to be totally nacho nuts because it is. So trying to represent 2 people with different interests at the same time is not possible. So let's wrap up with, when should I connect with a bank to buy a dental practice? When should I connect with a bank? The answer is now, not yesterday, now. Connect with a bank because a bank is going to develop a relationship with you. They're not going to tell you they're going to loan you on this amount. I know they're going to give you a letter that says you can get $1 million, like your grandmother telling you you're the most handsome person in the world. Or I get that. They're going to say you can get $1 million. That doesn't mean you get $1 million on the practice that you're looking at, but connect with them, get to know them, develop relationships, get them your info, start saving money in liquid assets. As a preview to future episodes, if you buy an $800,000 practice, you are going to need $80,000 in non-retirement assets, 10% of the purchase price. So if you're watching this now and you have $8 saved because you went to dental school, I totally get it. Start saving money. Don't overpay your student loans. Golden nacho tip. Don't pay too much on your student loans at the expense of saving money in non-retirement assets. Don't take too much money on your student loans at the Don't pay too much money on your student loans at the expense of not saving in non-retirement assets. There's been sad situations of a dentist who's paid $200,000 in student loans and no one would sell her a practice because she only had $5,000 in a bank account because you put it on her student loans. I didn't know this going into the field. I didn't know this at all. So the bank is the mom of the practice. Plans are never set until mom approved, and the bank has the money you need to succeed. So connect with banks as early as possible. Start developing relationships. So we're going to have multiple episodes here. I want to give you guys how you can access us. So part of this challenge, you can text me questions. This is my text hotline. And if you want to meet our team, some of them are sponsors of our group, to connect with them and start developing relationships, just text NTT to 215-543-6454. You're going to get our basketball team texted back to you. So we definitely have bank recommendations. Let's talk about some of these questions here. I listened to a podcast from financial advisors. They suggest having 3 months emergency savings before starting aggressively pay off your loans. Great, yeah. You want to have 3 months of your living expenses because there was a worldwide pandemic, and that was quite a thing. So that's a great tip from someone in the chat. Bank recommendations. We have sponsors of the group. Banks are the fit for you. I would start connecting with 2 or 3, not 20. That's too many. Not just one. Local banks often do not want to do dental deals. Often, not all the time. You're most of the time looking for dental specific lenders who understand this industry. Tips on approaching the owner about buying a practice. Save that for next one. That's great. Nacho team, just put questions we didn't get to. So tips on approaching the owner about buying the practice. Put that on my production sheet for next time. How much should I have before a partnership or buyout? Definitely dental focused accountant and attorney. Dental focused accountant and dental focused attorney. Sorry, person in the chat. They're the Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons of your team. Okay, they are the ones. You build around those 2 people. Dental focused accountant and dental focused attorney. They're often going to be with you past the transition, often going to be with you past the transition. Let me see if there's anything in the Q&A that I missed. Used to be 50K pre-COVID, is still at 10%. Banks, it's a great point. Get to 50K, great. Get to 50K, great. Some banks have said that and been much more flexible. Some banks it's all their tolerance for risk, the bank. So getting to 50K is great. 10% has been a long-term guide for this, but get to 50K and you can explain, listen, the practice is strong, the financials are strong, really good point there. So we fit this into our Sitcom Link show. I'm so happy you guys are here. We're going to have more episodes. So episode 1, how not to make a $30,000 mistake. A lot of that had to do with not working with the dual representation broker and not just paying percentage of collection. Profit is more important than percentage of collections, and also a ton of golden nacho tips. Make sure you're part of the Facebook group because I put tips in there all the time. Make sure you put down my text number and text 215-543-6454. You can text me anything. If you're having nachos you want me to know, text me a picture. I like knowing that too. I'm a real person too. And we're here to help. My nacho team is here. Someone asked it here in the chat, would you recommend BOA or Wells Fargo? Rates are really good point. Rates are just part of the loan. I have an amazing person who works with me, who advises me. My team knows who he is. He helps me with all of this. We can connect to, he's part of the NTT. You guys know who comes to Nacho headquarters every Thursday. Rates, 3% versus 4%. There's all different types of terms. Early prepayment. It's like the banker can't read how to bond the tooth. Golden Nacho tooth. Tip, put this one in for short. A dental-focused banker could read how to bond a tooth, but they would mess it up. They would mess it up. They wouldn't understand. Etch, silent. You can read the terms of your loan, but if you don't have somebody who looks at this all the time, read it with you, you're gonna mess it up. So it's not about B of A versus Wells Fargo versus Provide versus Huntington Bank versus anything like that. It's about the regional banks have different regions. A lot of times my sense is like they're car dealers. Sometimes they want to get loans and cars off the lot. Sometimes they don't. Work with more than one. Be objective and get someone on your team to help you. So really awesome first episode. You guys did great. You can take a picture of this for the text hotline. We're going to stick with our 30 minutes here and appreciate you guys being here. Nacho team,